Steve Bentley here, Bentley Custom Off-Road Grind, and today we're going to be going over on this video this build on this LC100 100 series lane cruiser. Came together really nicely. So we built a front bumper for it, hybrid bumper, so we got plate steel in the middle. I think 3/16 I pretty much used for most of that, and then the tubing on the outside wings, and Leon is going to get some lights in there eventually. He's got some clamps, so didn't get around to getting the lights, but he'll pop those in and just position them where he wants. 4-inch on the inside part of the wings, and then a little 3-inch one further out, and then apparently two 7-inch big lights on either side of the Toyota emblem there on the top of the grill bar. But came together nice. We got a 12,000 pound synthetic Harbor Freight winch in there, so that came together really nicely. Of the clearance profile was really nice, and we built that with the solenoid sticking on top of the winch, so not having to relocate that inside the truck. And then on the back we built a super high clearance bumper with a dual swing out. So what we did is we took off the rear cross member underneath here between the two frame rails and added in a 3x2 3/16 inch thick tubing, and built out a tire swing out and a fuel carrier that I made. Got some heavy duty latches on there, and then on the wings we've got some tubing as well, protecting everything, and it came together really solid. So stay tuned for the video. I'll show you how we did it. Bentley here, Bentley Custom Off-Road, and we are going to be working today and actually for the next week or so on this Land Cruiser. Pretty excited about it. It's going to be a big job. We're going to be putting in a rear plate bumper with dual swing outs, so a double jerry can fuel holder and a tire carrier. So that's going to look pretty sweet on the back end of this rig. And then on the front, we're going to be doing a hybrid bumper, so a plate bumper down the middle and then a set of tubing wings along the side. So we're going to go with a little smaller tube diameter, maybe 1.5, and get this thing dialed in. Here we go. First things first, as usual, we got to take the bumper off, but what I'm going to be doing is getting in there. I have not removed the bumper on a Land Cruiser, so I'm going to assume it's similar to some of the other things that we've been working on, but we'll figure that out as we get in there. And we've got some lights to relocate, and he's got these little recovery point hooks that he may or may not want to use, so we'll figure out how all this is going to go together. But let's get at this front bumper, pull that off, and probably even do the same on the back as well, just so I can start thinking about what I want to be doing and what's coming up. That way I can start to think about it and anticipate it. Leon asked me to just come up with a design as we go along. He has a bit of an idea, sent me a couple pics, but for the most part it's just recreated as we're hitting it. And this is going to be pretty easy to work on because we're going to be able to leave that body panel right there and create the bumper up here. Some of the 4Runners, the 4th gens, that side panel comes really high, so he's gonna have to cut the panel, but we won't have to do that here. So pull this bumper off, pull the front off, see what we're dealing with, and then start designing. Okay, when we're first working on one of these trucks, because we're taking this entire bumper off and replacing it, I don't have to measure where the bumper is and making. I'm just taking it right off and recreating it. So the grill comes up. So I'm thinking we're gonna be keeping this in, this strip here, because that frames that nicely and goes in nicely to the fender. So we're just going to be taking this plastic bumper cover off. Usually there's a bunch of clips and bolts, so we'll figure out how that all goes together. Get that done, and same thing on the back. Doesn't seem like there's a whole lot holding either the front or the back went in on this one, i.e. that there's missing bolts. So we'll get that taken care of, and let me turn the camera off so you're not watching me trying to figure this out, and then what I'll do is come back later and show you what it took to get it. Okay, it's kind of funny. All he had holding this bumper on was the bolts up on the left side here, right up underneath the top part of the bumper cover. Same thing on this side, so, and it just fell away. So I'm just gonna unclip the fog lights here so I don't wreck any of that wiring. We're gonna probably be able to use that wiring to wire in some lights that we're gonna put into the wing tubes that are gonna come out here. And then I can get into this front bumper cover, and I think, yeah, I'll get a pair of pliers or something to cut these clips off. I'll be right back. Okay, the front bumper is just being held on by those two bolts right there. See them? I think it's just the two. It goes into the front of this frame, a little clip holding the bumper on. Same thing on this side. Let's get those off and then see how else we're going to attach this. I'm feeling I'm probably going to use these bolt holes underneath here too to more securely fasten in the plates that I'm going to be welding in there, or bolting on to weld onto. 14mm bolts. Looks like it's just a little clip, yep. I'm thinking what I'm going to do is cut this off here at the bottom on each side. Oop. Cut it off here, use this point to bolt the plate into, but also bolt a plate up into here and then weld this support here along with the plate that goes across. Do the same on here as well. I'm thinking that's going to create a pretty solid connection to that bumper and the frame, and then we can build everything in all around that. So that's the plan so far. So here's my thoughts so far on how we're going to put this all together. So we've got the bottom of these brackets cut off. It's about 8.5 inches from the back of these bolts to the front here, and it's about 4 inches from here. So what I'm going to do is 35 inches from the outside edge of each of these brackets here. So I'm going to do the winch plate. It's going to be 35 inches long. It's going to go to the edge here, all the way over to here. It's going to come out about 7.5 inches from this frame here, so it's going to kind of butt up against that. Maybe not quite, but close. And so that's 4 inches here. There's going to be another 4 inch and that 4.5 inch tab going in behind here, so I can bolt into these bolt locations here and then tie it in at the front on these ones. And then on the side, once I get the winch plate in, and I'm going to decide on or the base plate for the winch, then I'm going to decide on the front piece here. The faceplate for the winch. It's going to go across the front here, probably at a bit of an angle, I think. So I might be able to shave the base plate back a little bit across here. I just need to, I think I'm going to set up like a mock stand here, figure out where the winch is going to sit, and then what I need to do for the base here. So I'll have to set up a little set of RV leveling blocks here to figure that out. The electrical cable that's coming out of the back of the winch is right here on this particular support. So it's too bad it wasn't a little lower. I could drop it down a tad, but I don't want to. I want to tie it into this and keep it just totally connected to this whole deal here. And then the side supports here are going to be the anchoring for the tubing that's going to go around the corners. And then I just have to deal with these lines here. I can move them around a little bit, but I think I should be able to move that one over, get the plate coming up here, and then tie the tubing into that. So I think that's probably going to work out pretty good. About to pop the winch in there just to get some spacing. And this little bracket underneath the grill is in the way, so I'm just going to cut that out. Here it is. Get that out of the seam. I like it. This is what we decided. Still a little off center, but get that sorted out later. We're going to leave the solenoid on because even if I took this off, that's 4 inches. I only have 2.5 inches of clearance here. Got to keep this below the grill because this is pushed back as far as it'll go. And this lever still needs to be underneath this grill here. And then we'll put we're going to sneak it up a little bit. We're going to put an opening here so we can get in, release this, pull the winch controller cover off, and what I'm thinking here is we're going to be 8 inches out. So I've got an 8-inch wide piece of steel, so I've got some 3/16 over there that we're going to put on for the base. And then what I'm going to do is, I think it's 3.5 inches from the back here to the end of the bolt locations. I'll check it on the other side, but I think it's the same. And then we'll have a 2.5 inch wide fin that comes out, and I'm probably going to angle it across here. But right now I'm just going to cut this all square. It's just easier for me to manage all that. And once we get that bolted in, I'm going to weld in a cap here to come up for the front. And then I think we can probably cut that angle here and start leaning it out by changing some angles, make it a little bit more geometric. But I like the way it's looking. So we got the winch base plate cut, and I think that looks awesome. I'm gonna clean that up with the surface conditioning tool, and then get the holes drilled, put it up underneath, and start thinking about how I'm gonna weld in that top piece that's gonna bolt into the front of the frame. And then we'll fart around with the angles that we're gonna change over on these corners later, if at all. I think I probably will, but just slice it a little bit. I think it'll be a good transition into the tubing. And then what we're gonna do after that is position the winch under there, get those holes drilled for now, and that way that's done. And then I can bolt that sucker back into the truck frame and then start piecing everything else around that. As we get the winch in, we don't need this corner here, so I'm thinking try and get the winch on there. As tight as I can get it. Leveled out. And see, we've got our winch mount plate right here. Our holes are right in here. And then we can feed that up through there later. But we don't need that section there. And then I'm going to have, whatever I put here, I'm going to have a little hole here to access this bolt to tighten it up. Or loosen it once we want to take it off. That's okay. It doesn't need to be big. And that looks really good. Right in there. So we've got not sticking out much at all at the front, so that's awesome. And I think we might be able to, sorry about the wind, I think my remote mic's up in Colorado. is going to be good. So we'll angle that, I think. A little hole here to access the deal. We'll figure that out in a minute. But we've got our side plate here we can put in and deal with something around here and get those probably come up like that, I think. Use something like that. Figure it out. Coming along. So for figuring out the holes, what I'm going to do here is cut a plate here with the approximate hole location in it. Bolt it into here, settle it into here, and then tack it into place and then weld it later. We got some space underneath so I can weld it both front and back. And on the underside holes here, what I'm going to do is take this plate off, now that I know it fits, and mark out the center line of the holes and then the location of each hole. I think there's like one here and one here. And just mark it on the side and then cross that out and then drill those holes. And then the same thing for the, it's a pattern for the winch. I think it's 10 inches across by, is it? I can't remember. 4.5, 5 or something like that. What is that? Probably 6. Something like that, 5.5. So we'll get that pattern figured out, drill those in. Then that plate's done. I can bolt that into position, weld those front pieces on, get those bolted in, and then start building everything else around it. So really, the hardest part of this whole deal is just getting this bolt plate started. So it's the winch plate, but I call it the bolt plate because I'm bolting it into the frame. Just getting that started is the hardest deal in the whole thing. Once you've got that figured out, then everything else just kind of flows. It's like, what angle do you want it at? How high do you want that plate to be? You know, where do you want the holes to be cut? So you've got a few things that you need to put in here in order to access your gearing. We have the winch plate put in. Don't need that anymore, it's all bolted in. However, didn't notice this as I was, actually I did see it, but I didn't think about it. I don't know if you can see that right there, but there's a little weld hanging down right there, and it's creating a gap. Can you see that? That little dot right in here. Right there, just a piece of my finger. It's holding the plate down, it's tilted down. So I'm gonna take this plate off, unbolt it, and sand the bottom of these frames down. Not so bad on that side, but just a little bit of a indentation, or out indentation, I guess. I'm gonna smooth that out and then put this plate back on. I think it'll keep it a little bit more level, is what I want. I actually think these are M14 bolts up underneath here on either side. So just put some spacers in there. I don't think I need them for these ones, but those have a smooth collar on them. So I've got this block that was in there from before. May leave that in, but I'm probably gonna cut the hook off and just leave the spacer in there, or I'll track down some M14 bolts. However, on here, so now we're going to weld in the front here, the plates bolt into there. This is actually at a bit of an angle, so that's why I want to actually cut the hole for this piece of steel that's going to go here, bolt it in. It's going to be a little bit of an angle like that, if you can see that. And then I'm thinking I may want to just weld in a little tab here and then bolt into these holes here. We've got some holes on either side here that I can use, and we can get a bolt in there and get a little bit more structure or security, tightening that in there and stop it from flexing. So I think we're going to do that. Get the length of that. Actually, I think I can probably use some of these M12s. I think that might be enough. Nope, not quite enough. Is it a 40? Probably. need a little bit longer. Anyways, so I think I'm going to weld some tabs on there, weld some tabs on the front, and those little angle pieces there, and then pop that off, drill the holes for the winch, which I wanted to get all this set in first, and then we are ready to get going. But I think I am going to stop for the day after I get these little plates popped in there and maybe the winch holes, and then I'll start working on the rest of the bumper. Tomorrow's Thanksgiving. Probably not tomorrow. Maybe Friday or the weekend, but dive into it next week. Should get that front bumper done sometime early to mid next week, then work on the back. As I'm going through it, I'll get some primer on it and then do the coating all together. Okay, loving the way this is coming together so far. These little plates are dialed in. These are 3.5, maybe a bit more high, 2.5 inches wide, and that's 60 millimeters, maybe 61 millimeters from the bottom plate here. And I just drew a line through the hole that was in the bracket, marked it on here, marked it on the inside of the bracket, and then when I put this plate up, just connected the two, drew the line, measured the distance, drilled that on the drill press. These are nice and snug. The plate is snug up against the bottom of the frame. I like that. I think I'm going to go with this idea here with a hole bolt on each of those. So I'm just going to weld a tab onto here, some 3/16 inch plate, and then I'm just going to weld this on, and there's enough room in behind here on this bracket's cut up high enough I'll be able to get a weld in back there as well. So that combination of 4 big M14 bolts on the bottom, these on the sides, and then some bolts on the frame here, I'm liking how sturdy that's going to be. And then so the next thing is weld those tabs on, get the winch holes drilled, measure that all off, and then I am good to go to start building the rest of the bumper later this week or next week.
Yeah. Not potatoes, but not a carrot fan.
Not a carrot.
I bet they like apples. I have to do an apple next time. Even that one, she like chewed up the carrot and then was like, well. Not a carrot fan. Not a carrot fan.
Cutie. A beautiful morning out here today, working on the bumper, and it is coming along real nice. So we get the main part done here, and now it's all about building it out from here. So what we've got so far is the 2 side tabs here. We've got the bolts underneath, and I've put these tabs on the middle here as well, and more just to secure the center part of the winch plate. So from here, what I'm thinking of doing is just cutting these at an angle off on here and having the main part of the winch come down here. I'm going to put the winch in here first just to see where it fits in relation to that, but I believe the edge of the winch is right where this angle comes to the front of the winch plate. I think that's actually going to fit in really good. Yeah, I'm going to put the winch in there, get those winch bolts in place, make sure everything is lined up properly before I start welding a whole whack load of stuff onto this main plate here, because it's going to be a lot easier to adjust those holes if I had to without everything else on there. So hopefully it's lined up, and then from here it's just building out a little bit of a bottom skid plate here just to cover off the bottom, leaving holes obviously for the access to the bolts. And then same thing on the side panel here, just a little bit of a cover, and I want to be able to access that bolt as well on each side. And then building that up, and then a bit of a top cap on here, and then some access to the winch controls over on this side. Tricky part's going to be over here, where we've got these, I think they're, I guess, AC lines, compressor lines, and I want to get a side panel on here. It might end up coming right up in the middle here, because I want to attach the round tubing for this area onto that side panel and tie in the front grille top plate here. That's going to end here because I've got tubing on the sides. So there we are so far. Okay, I've got an idea here for the front. So I want to be angling these. I think that's going to make make it look less boxy. Although the front of this Land Cruiser is a kind of boxy look, I don't want to make it too boxy, so just adding a little bit of relief in here by angling this is going to make it look pretty cool. But then I also was just sitting there, do a lot of that, just looking at it, trying to think of one thing, how's that going to play out? And then I saw this line at the headlight in the grill, and that actually is perfect because it comes just inside this bolt, which I want to leave open so I can access it. But if I draw that line down there with the panel here and have it shape out this way on each side, and then have this angle going in here, I think that's going to look pretty cool. I can't really picture it exactly how it's going to look, so grab some cardboard here, and I am going to start cutting and put that all into place and see how that looks. Here's the mock-up so far. So I've got some angles that are going to be putting in here. I'm not sure if you can see that with the, it's a little overexposed. Let's try and tone that down. There we go. So this is coming off this corner here. I'm going to weld it all in here and then put a panel in here. I can either make it one piece and bend it in a couple spots or just put individual panels. So that's going to be, it's just going to be a crease here. So a bend on that line there. And then we've got this piece here that's going to be, let's see if you can see that. Kind of like this. There's going to be a line there. And then here. Like that. And then the tubing for the wings here is going to connect in around here. And then one down here. So it's going to come up like that to this side here, and in this tube here, there's the tubing, is going to go along and around the corner there. So that's kind of thought so far. I'm just sitting here looking at it. There's the winch hole for the fair lead in the front, and then the access right there for the lever and the controls for the wireless versus cabled winch controller. So just trying to decide on the angle here. I think I'd like to have this come out a little bit more. I've got this at 7 inches. I might make that 8, and then come out a little higher and farther forward, and then drive back a little bit. I'm not sure. Oh, I like it though. It's coming along. Okay, here's the plan. We got it all dialed in now. I'm going to make that front winch plate, the fair lead plate, about 1 inch higher. So it's going to be at 8 inches high, and still follow the line of that headlight coming down. And then I'm going to add in another port, make it a little 1 inch narrower, but add in another port on the passenger side just to balance it out. I think that looks kind of cool. We're contemplating popping in some more light ports in here rather than just up in the wings, but I think we're going to hold off for now. Just have the fair lead plate in here. It's about 3.5 inches up. I got it a little too low here, but so I'll raise that up a tad. And then right now I'm going to pull all this off, take the angles for that front plate. We're going to cut it in about 3 inches from each side for that little angled corner here. And then you'll see it looks a lot nicer. The cardboard kind of gets a little floppy, but it looks a lot nicer once you get those angles cut in there and the geometric component starts to kick in. So anyways, we'll cut this front fair lead plate. I might get the other components of it cut today, and then I'll be wrapping it up for today. Today's Saturday. I try not to do too much stuff on the weekend. And but I like it. It's coming along nice. Okay, we are rolling along here. I put the winch back on because I wanted to get the angle of this front plate here, and I wanted to have the winch in place. So what we've done here is we put that out with the plasma cutter over there. This is going to be the front shackle mounts. They're going to go in these two little areas. You'll see that later. And I wanted to cut, obviously, drill the holes and cut the fair lead opening out for the front. And then this is just going to be about 100 to 105 degrees, or I guess 10 to 15 degrees forward of the winch. So kind of that angle like that. So next I'm going to be taking the winch out because I want to I don't want to be pulling this on and off with that sucker in there. It's a lot of weight. And I don't need it in there anymore. So there's the Fear Lead, I think. I'm going to go with like 105 degrees. Probably 105. Between 100 and 105. There's 100. There's 105. And then the next piece is going to go up on top of here with the cutouts for the winch in gearing, and then just another one on the other side to balance it out visually. And we do have room up in behind here if we wanted to pop another light port up in the front corners, but we're going to leave that for now. And then the shackle mounts that go right there, and then once we get this welded into place, then we can do the top caps, the top piece up at the angle here, and then the top cap on the top underneath the grill, and then the side mounts and the little geometric angles there, obviously leaving room to access this bolt here. And when we put the bottom plate on, we're going to make sure we leave room for accessing the bolts that secure the winch into the plate. So that's where we're at right now. Okay, what I was doing there is just making sure I've got the edges not butted up, but with a bit of a gap in between the two edges from one side to the other, so I can fill that in with weld, and then obviously making sure I got the angle set up properly. I like it. Yeah, it looks good. So next I'm going to put that top plate on, this one here, top front plate, and that's the one with the little holes on it for the reaching in to get access to the winch. So I'm going to have to cut those out. Probably do that before I put it on. And I think I'm going to be done for the day. I'll cover it up and then leave it out here. Try and keep the rain off. I don't think it's supposed to rain for a few days, so I think we're okay. We just get so much dew and moisture out here overnight, so I'd like to get some plastic on it so it doesn't get wet, and I don't want to keep unbolting it and taking it on and off once I get to this stage. So almost done for the shutting it down for the day. Just put the top plate in. I actually put the whole plate in all in one piece, angled it to about 140 degrees from here, so I guess 50 over from this plane, and then I cut out the port so that way I got all the angle consistent all the way across. So that's rather than doing each one individually. Next is to do the top plate on here and carry that into this line here, I believe, and then just up underneath, give it about 1/2 inch of clearance, and that'll be good for that. And then I can get working on the side panels here, and then the little geometric connection in there. Just tacked in all the panels so far in case I change my mind on something. And then we've got the big shackle mounts. I was actually going to put these on the back, but then I think these fit better with my application here, so go with that. Anyways, that's where we're at right now, and I'm gonna cover this up and go start dinner. Hey, good morning. Another beautiful day here. So far, we just gonna get figured out here. I want to start welding this in before I put the final top cap piece in here, because I want to make sure that if I'm welding and it starts to change the angles on that front plate, this whole area here, that it's not going to mess up what I do up here. So I'm going to start to stabilize the sides. So weld in these two side pieces, one on the other side. The other one's square. Put a little notch in here for the compressor lines. Just bent this one back a little bit. This one pulled it out a smidge. And then now what I'm going to be able to do is start to put the panels in the side here. So this is going to be a little tricky through here, but I'm thinking if I do this, this is a piece here. So from this angle to that corner, that's going to be one piece. And then here's going to be another angle. So that's going to come up to the top here. And then this piece here will be another one. And, oh, sorry, this piece here, like that. And then this piece here will be another one. So one kind of triangle and three really long triangles, or two really long triangles. I think that's going to look really sweet on the side. And then for this one here, I'm going to cut out a little geometric design so we can access that bolt up in the front on each side. So that's the thought so far. I'm going to get on that, get those cut, and then once those are all done, I'm going to do the welding on the inside, because that'll stabilize the structure here. So if I start welding it now, this is just going to pull this whole thing out. It's at up 104 degrees right now. It'll pull it out to probably less than 100 if I just weld across the front here. So I'm going to stabilize the sides, get inside, stitch weld on the inside, alternating on the outside and the inside. That'll balance it out quite nicely, and I think keep the shape that's there, because I don't want to change that. Here we go. Coming along really nicely. We got most of the front plates in. I just have the top one to do. That's kind of what it's going to look like, I think. And this is smoking hot right now. So we did a bunch of welding, did some stitch welding on the inside there, and then spot welding on the back of these top welds, because I couldn't really reach back up in there. I knew that was going to be an issue. And then that's going to go on there. Just wanted to make sure I got this all in place first before I cut that. One thing you'll probably notice is I angled this in a little bit. These were kind of level. Actually, initially they were in line with that there, so they were out a little bit, and I didn't like the way that looked, so I brought them even. Put this corner piece in, still didn't like it. I thought it would look cooler if I just brought it in a smidge, so like half an inch. And I like that angle, looks really good. And I'm gonna smooth all those welds out. So that's all just gonna be integrated. Same on the other side. I like it. So I'm gonna have to shorten the length of this top piece a little bit, but I'd like to get this half an inch from the grill and about an inch in. So that's all about an inch all across there. So I just have to adjust that this fraction of a smidge at the front here. I think the backs are lining up pretty good still, because that's what I wanted initially. Maybe shave it off a little bit and then bring those front edges in, cut that out, tack weld that into place, and then probably do the final welding later. Just want to get that in so it's all secured. Then I can start messing around with the tubing. And the guy that owns this place that we're renting from here in Texas is herding cattle right now down there. So he just sent me a text to say, come on down, check it out. So I might wander down that way. Anyways, that's what we're looking like so far. That's all done. Got the welding for the most part all done. Still need to smooth it out later, but I'm just going to smooth out the welding on the side panels here so I can get the round tubing into place. So we're going to do about 30 inches, maybe a little less, from here around the top corner here to the end, and just figuring out where I'm going to put the bend. It's like I'm going to have that just out a little bit. We've got some brackets here, so we're going to have to stay off that. So the tubing's going to come out a little bit from the bumper, just to be out here half an inch below. Actually, I can probably get it right up to it because we're coming out a bit. Although I need to stay here and might rise it up a little bit and around, or just butt it straight into here and then come around, and then have another piece here going back up to here. And that's going to be about 14, 15, 16 inches long from the bottom here to the end. So, and then we're going to get some light ports in there once that's all done, and it's looking good. I'm going to get this done today so I can start thinking about lights and let Leon know some sizes that we've got, and then we can weld some brackets in later for those. And he asked a question about that compressor line there, so we might cover that up with the brackets for the lighting. So I like it, looks good. The start of the wing bars in place, and so now what we're going to be doing is connecting that, give it a bit of support. So we had a little bend here, and then straightened it out for a bit, and then another bend here at the end, and just to protect the corners. And now we're going to get a bar that's going to come out here. Let's get some. Come out from the side here, come along a bit, and then curve up into there, and that'll give us some space. So gradually reduce this line here, but we'll have room for a couple light pods in here. So I'm thinking around this area here, gradually come up, and then whoop, just curve up into the bottom here. Give it a little bit of support, and then as I mentioned, get some room for some light pods, and do that same on the other side, and then we're done the front bumper. Sand down some of the welds, or all the outside welds, and then get some primer on it, and then get working on the back bumper. Front end is pretty much put together. Got to finish welding those tubes. I love the way they really balance out the front end of this truck. Really nice. Get some light ports in there, and I am pretty excited about how that's turned out. So, finish this front off and then get going on that. Just a couple little side pieces here. I decided to throw a little skid plate on there on the bottom. So I've got two little triangles to put up here on the corner on the end, and that allows access to the bottom bolts. And then you can reach in here to get those front plate bolts, and then the little tabs at the back. And that's it. So the front's almost done. Probably half an hour tomorrow, and then it'll be finished. And then sand down the weld there on the bottom, and get some primer on it, and get working on the back. Oh, here's the corner pieces for the skid plate. I like how that carries the angles down. Got the holes for accessing the winch bolts in the bottom skid plate there. That's the only reason they're there. And I think what I'm going to do is weld in some nuts to the top of those, because it's going to be really hard to get in there with the winch. And I imagine, yeah, you could probably reach in behind the grill here and access those bolts from the top, but I think I'm just going to, yeah, it's going to be pretty tight. So I'm going to weld in some nuts and washers on there. And then that's done. So right now we're working on the bull bar. So we're just going to bring that out at an angle here, carry it across the front, just around maybe the lower half of the Toyota emblem from the front here, and just maybe leading a little bit on the bumper, kind of out to there. I think that's what I'm going to do, and just tie it right into the ends here, and it's going to angle up so it's not going to impact the headlight view at all. So I like it. I think that's good. Okay, we're working on the angle here. So what I did is just think, okay, well, where do I want this to be angled like that? So I'll take my digital angle finder here and just hold it up like that. Kind of looks like that. That's going to work. Can move it up or down a little bit once I get into the coping part of it. And then where are we at there? 117, something like 115 or so. To the numbers, not really relevant. It's, what is this here? So hold that up there, and that's where we're at. So that is good. So I'm gonna carry that on to the other end here, recreate that. Make sure I measure the very top of it. So I'm gonna put a line down the top here. Make sure I get that lined up when I put it back in for the other side. We're ready to bend this sucker. Show you what I did here. So this is where I started the bend before. I don't care how much extra here I'm chopping off, probably around here. And then what I did is I measured, okay, where is the bend stop? And that's here. You can tell from the little marks on the side of the tubing, and the little indent starts right here. Then I held that up to here, put the pipe in, and then marked where the bend stopped, laid that down, marked it at the same spot on this side, and then measured along the tubing. Okay, how many inches was that from the start of the bend? That's 10.5 inches. So then I measured that along the tube, 10.5 inches, and then put that little mark in here, right there, and it's just inside the tubing here. I think, did I get that right? I gotta move it back just a ½ inch, I think. So it's, I think it's right here. Right now I want it to here. And then make sure that line's on top, bend it out, and then hope I got all the angles right. Nice. Got a laying on the ground, it's level. One side's not at a different angle than the other. And just kind of held it up to the front bumper there, approximately where I want it. Got a thumb on each side. And just around here is where I want the tube to be on top of the other tube. So it's about 8 inches. So I measured that off on each side. And then took 8 inches from here and put 8 inches from this line here on this side. And I'm just going to cope that out and do the same thing on the other side here, right there. And we're going to get that into position and see how it goes. So that's the coping there. I think that's going to work. I'll tidy that up later. I just want to get it to rough length. Do the same thing on this side, and then fit it into place, and then start sanding down the edges here so it's a perfect fit. Okay, we have that grill bar done up. Forgot that relative to this bar, these top bars here are sloping away, so I actually had to take more on the inside out, so it's actually a lot steeper of a coping angle, so I have to just keep shaving off the inside here. So got that done. So now we're just going to figure out the angle that we want, pop that into place. I think. Make sure it's level, it's good. Assuming the grill's level. And I like the Toyota logo, so we'll just have that a little below it. Right there. I like that angle. And then that's back edge of this bar is lined up perfectly with the top. So as I'm putting it in, I'll just recreate that. Cool. Okay, we're all set. So that's coming off, then I'm going to finish sanding it, get some primer on it, and we'll figure out this week what we're going to do with light ports in here, and make some brackets later in the week. But I want to get this off the truck, get it coated so it doesn't rust, And I can clean the truck a bit more, get some welding or grinding dust on it. Clean that up and then get started. This is the front bumper, all more or less done. And got the primer coat on it, obviously, sanded it down, got the surface conditioning tool, hit that. Also realized that I needed to cut a couple notches here to access those little bolts that I was gonna put in. So I gotta weld those in still later. I'll probably forget, but the plan is to do it. And anyways, so this is not gonna rust anymore while I've got that on. And then later I'll be putting on a brush coat of enamel, a Rust-Oleum enamel right there. And then a spray coat of enamel just to cover up the brush marks. And then a bed liner spray coating or two. Hey there everybody, well the build is finally done. We got the super high clearance bumper in the rear and we got this hybrid plate and tubing bumper up in the front end. We got a 12,000 pound Harbor Freight winch in there. All came together really nicely. There's that bad boy winch inside there. And we got a couple shackle mounts on there, some tubing. Leon's gonna pop a couple 7-inch lights on here, put some brackets on there, clamps. A 4-inch one here and a 3-inch on the farther out. You know, utilize that one light on each side and add some more. And then on the back, we've got the tubing, came together really nice. And the tire swing out. It's a little LED light on there. And then a fuel carrier with a locking bar. And get some fuel cans in there. But yeah, here we go. Came together nice. Thanks for watching the video. If you have any questions, shoot them in the comments. And yeah, pretty happy with how that turned out.